Chapter 6: The Truth About Her Mother. The house was quiet, unnervingly so, but Mia couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The note left in her mother's room, the destruction of the letters, everything pointed to one terrifying truth. Someone wanted her to stop digging. Yet, there was no turning back now. She had to know what happened to her mother. Mia had learned one thing during her brief time in the Hastings mansion. The family's wealth wasn't just built on power, it was built on secrets. And now, with Daniel's help, she had found the hidden estate records that might hold the answers she needed. Daniel had warned her about the dangers of digging deeper, but after the note, Mia knew there was no other choice. She met him in the basement late that night, the dim light from a single bulb flickering overhead. He handed her a thick folder, its contents heavily redacted, but enough to make Mia's heart race. "These are copies of your mother's last will and testament," Daniel whispered, "but there's more. Something your family has kept hidden for years." Mia flipped through the pages, searching for something, anything that would explain Catherine's disappearance. And then, there it was, a clause in Catherine's will that made her blood run cold. "If I am no longer able to care for my daughter, Mia Hastings will be placed in the custody of a trusted family member until she reaches adulthood. However, should any harm come to me, it is to be revealed to her that I was forced to leave for her protection." Mia's hands shook as she read the next part. The truth must never be hidden from her. She deserves to know that she is not alone. She froze. The words screamed at her from the page. Her mother had known something was coming, and she had left instructions to keep Mia safe, to protect her from whoever had been after her. But who? And why? The next morning, Mia approached Julian in the garden, her mind spinning with everything she had just uncovered. She couldn't keep this to herself any longer. She needed answers. "Julian," she said quietly, "I found something. Something about my mother." He looked at her, his face giving away nothing. "What did you find?" "I found her will, and a letter saying she was forced to leave for my protection." Julian's expression didn't change, but for a brief second, Mia saw something flicker in his eyes, a flash of guilt, fear. "Your mother," Julian began, but stopped himself. He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding her gaze. Mia pressed on. "What happened to her, Julian? What are you all hiding?" There was a long silence. Finally, Julian spoke. "You don't understand. If you knew the truth, you wouldn't be able to look at me or anyone else the same way again." Mia's heart raced. "The truth? I need you to tell me, Julian. You owe me that." He exhaled sharply, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had just fallen on them. "Your mother wasn't just trying to protect you from someone. She was protecting you from us." Mia's mind reeled at the words. Her mother had been protecting her from the Hastings family? From Julian? "What do you mean?" Mia whispered. "What are you saying?" Julian's gaze fell to the ground. "Your mother, Mia, she knew the truth about your father's death. He didn't die in an accident, Mia. He was murdered." Mia's pulse quickened. "What? No, that's not." "He was killed," Julian continued, his voice growing harder, "by someone within the family, and your mother was going to expose it. But the Hastings legacy, the fortune, the control, it was all at stake. So they forced her to leave, and when she didn't comply, they made her disappear. The family's power had to stay intact." Mia's world tilted on its axis. Her father's death wasn't a tragedy, it was a crime. But the more she thought about it, the more pieces fell into place. The will, the threats, her mother's fear, this was bigger than a family secret. This was a murder wrapped in lies and deceit. "I tried to warn you," Julian said, his voice low, filled with regret. "But you're not safe, Mia. Not here." Mia stood there in the garden, the weight of the revelation crashing down on her. Her mother had been right all along. She had been running from the Hastings family. And Mia, she had been kept hidden for a reason. "Then why didn't you just tell me the truth?" Mia demanded, her anger flaring. "Because telling you would have made you a target," Julian said. "And because I had to protect you from the people who—" He stopped short, as though there were things he still couldn't say. Mia clenched her fists. "I can't just sit here and let you all keep lying. My father, he was murdered, and I'm not going to stop until I find out who did it." Her voice shook with the weight of the decision, but there was no turning back now. She had the truth, and the only thing left to do was uncover everything. Chapter 7: Unmasking the Villain. The walls of the Hastings estate seemed to close in on Mia, their coldness reflecting the dangerous truth she had uncovered. Her father's murder, why her mother's disappearance. It was all intertwined in a web of deceit, and Mia was determined to untangle it, no matter the cost. But as she dug deeper, the more she realized someone was willing to do anything to stop her from finding the truth. After Julian's revelation, Mia had taken to investigating in the shadows, piecing together clues in the dead of night. She had learned so much, but still not enough to confront the person behind the curtain, the one who had orchestrated everything. Daniel had been invaluable, offering the resources and information Mia needed, even if he still harbored reservations about getting too deeply involved. But it was the final piece of the puzzle that eluded her. She needed a confession, proof, something to reveal the true villain in this tangled mess. And it was time to confront Victoria Hastings, the woman who had seemed so cold and distant, but who, Mia now suspected, had a far darker role in this story. It was late evening when Mia decided to face Victoria, the eldest Hastings who had always held the reins of the family with iron control. She found her in the drawing room, a place where the family often gathered for formal gatherings. The large windows framed the dusky sky, casting an eerie glow on the walls. Victoria looked up as Mia entered, her lips curving into a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Mia, I've been expecting you." Mia took a deep breath, her heart pounding. It was now or never. She wasn't leaving without answers. "Do you know who killed my father?" Mia asked, her voice unwavering. Victoria's smile faltered, just for a split second, but she recovered quickly. "Your father died because of his own choices. His downfall was inevitable. It was his mistakes that led to his demise." Mia's jaw tightened. "That's not what happened, and you know it. He was murdered, wasn't he?" For a moment there was silence. Victoria stared at her, a calculating glint in her eyes. Then, in a voice colder than the room itself, she said, "Yes, your father was murdered, but you're asking the wrong questions." Mia felt her blood run cold. "What do you mean?" Victoria rose from her chair, walking slowly toward Mia. "You want to know who killed him? Why don't you ask the person who had the most to gain from his death?" Mia's mind raced. "The person who had the most to gain? You?" Mia started, her voice a whisper. "You killed him?" Victoria's expression softened, almost pitying. "I didn't kill him, Mia. I wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. But I knew. I allowed it to happen." Mia staggered back, her head spinning. "What are you talking about?" Victoria's lips twisted into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Your father was a threat to the family. He was going to expose everything. The financial dealings, the illegal activities we've been involved in for years. He was going to ruin us all. So someone had to stop him." Mia shook her head in disbelief. "But why would you let that happen?" Victoria's gaze hardened. "I did what needed to be done. Your father wasn't just a man. He was a liability. And sometimes in this family we do what we have to do to protect what's ours. The Hastings name, the estate, everything we've worked for." Mia's mind raced. Her mother had been right all along. Victoria Hastings was at the center of it all. "You were the one who ordered my mother's disappearance, weren't you?" Mia asked, voice trembling with the weight of her accusation. Victoria's eyes darkened. "Your mother, she wasn't as innocent as you think. She wanted to leave, to take you with her, but she was going to ruin everything. She would have exposed us all, Mia. I couldn't let that happen." The truth was starting to settle in, and it felt like ice in her veins. Victoria had not just been complicit in her father's murder. She had orchestrated it, using her influence to protect the family's dark secrets. Mia took a deep breath. "So you killed my father, you forced my mother to disappear, and now you want me gone too, don't you?" Victoria's smile grew. "You've been a distraction for too long, Mia, and you're starting to ask the right questions. You're dangerous now, and that makes you disposable." Before Mia could react, the door slammed open behind her, and she spun around to find Julian standing there, his expression a mix of fear and guilt. "You need to leave, Mia," Julian said urgently, his voice shaking. "You're not safe here anymore." Victoria's smile faltered, then grew darker. "You can't protect her, Julian. Not anymore." Mia looked between them, heart pounding. She had never felt so betrayed. Julian had known. He had been part of this too. "I didn't want this," Julian said, his voice cracking. I wanted to protect you, Mia, but I couldn't. Victoria sneered. You should have never come back, Mia. You've ruined everything. Just as Mia turned to run, the lights flickered. She was no longer alone. A figure stepped from the shadows, their face hidden, but the glint of a gun gleaming in the dim light. Chapter 8. The Final Confrontation and a New Beginning. The house was alive with chaos. Lights flickered and shadows crept in every corner. For Mia, everything had led to this moment. She was standing in front of the one person who had orchestrated her father's death and her mother's disappearance, Victoria Hastings. But things were no longer as clear as they had been before. The final piece of the puzzle was still missing, and Mia was running out of time. The gun gleamed in the dim light of the drawing room, and Mia's heart slammed against her chest. The figure that had stepped from the shadows wasn't just a guard or some hired hand. It was Eleanor Hastings, Victoria Hastings' sister. Mia had never suspected her. But as the gun lowered slightly, a dark realization struck her. Eleanor had been in on it all along. Eleanor? Mia said, her voice a mix of disbelief and anger. You? You were behind all of this? Eleanor's lips curled into a bitter smile. Oh, Mia, you were always so naive. You thought you were a Hastings, but you were nothing more than a pawn in a game you didn't understand. She stepped forward, her hand still gripping the gun, though now she aimed it directly at Mia. You were never meant to find out. We couldn't let you destroy everything. Mia shook her head, piecing together the fragments of her story. You were part of it. You killed my father, you and Victoria. Eleanor's laugh cut through the tension. Don't be so dramatic, Mia. It wasn't about killing your father. It was about control. Your father was a threat to everything we've built, to the fortune, to the power. And your mother, she got in the way too. Mia's mind raced, but one thing was clear. Eleanor had been the puppet master all along. Victoria had just played her part. As Eleanor continued to point the gun at Mia, the tension in the room thickened. But Mia wasn't afraid anymore. She had come this far, uncovered the truth, and fought for her life. There was no backing down now. She turned to Victoria, who had remained silent, watching the confrontation unfold with cold eyes. You knew all along, didn't you? Mia accused, her voice steady. You were never the innocent one. You let this happen. Victoria's eyes flickered, but she didn't speak. Instead, her face hardened. You don't understand, Mia. We didn't have a choice. It was either your father or us. And now it's you. You have to be stopped. Mia's heart raced. She had come here seeking answers, but now she understood. The real battle was for her survival. You think you can control me? Control my life? I'm not a part of your legacy, Victoria. Not anymore. Just as Eleanor began to tighten her grip on the gun, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. The door burst open, and Julian rushed into the room, eyes wide with fear. Get away from her, Eleanor, he shouted, rushing forward. Eleanor spun around, momentarily distracted by his arrival. In that brief moment, Mia took action, stepping forward with surprising speed and knocking the gun from Eleanor's hand. The weapon slid across the floor, but the real battle wasn't over yet. Eleanor lunged at Mia, her hands gripping Mia's throat, trying to choke the life out of her. Julian lunged at Eleanor, but before he could reach her, she delivered a sharp elbow to his side, knocking him back. The two women grappled, their struggle intense, fueled by desperation. But Mia was stronger now, determined to survive, to take control of her future. With a final surge of strength, she broke free, pushing Eleanor off her. The room was silent for a moment, the only sound the ragged breaths of the two women. Julian slowly got to his feet, his eyes meeting Mia's. It's over, Mia. They're done. Eleanor, defeated, slumped against the wall, breathing heavily. You'll never be free, she muttered, her voice trembling with rage. You'll never be rid of the Hastings name. We'll always come for you. Mia's heart ached, but she knew it was time to end this twisted legacy once and for all. Turning to Victoria, she said, You're not getting away with it. This is over. Victoria's gaze hardened, but there was something else, fear, in her eyes. I'm going to make sure you pay for what you did to my family, Mia said firmly. As the police arrived to arrest Victoria and Eleanor, Mia's future seemed to stretch out before her like an unknown horizon. The Hastings family, once powerful and untouchable, had crumbled under the weight of its own lies. The legacy of the Hastings name no longer had a hold on Mia. She stood at the window of the mansion, staring out at the horizon, the sun just beginning to rise. The journey had been brutal, filled with betrayals, danger, and loss, but it had also revealed her strength, her resilience, and her ability to fight for what was right. Julian stood beside her, a mixture of relief and regret on his face. I never meant for any of this to happen. Mia turned to him, her face hard. But it did. And now we move forward. I'm done with the Hastings legacy. I'm going to find my own path. Julian nodded, the weight of the past between them. I understand. Mia walked toward the door, stopping before leaving. She took one last look at the mansion, the home that had never been a home, the legacy that had never been hers to claim. Goodbye, Hastings, she whispered, before stepping out into the world, ready to begin again. Epilogue. Months later, Mia stood in front of a small but bustling cafe, smiling to herself as she read the letter in her hands. The court proceedings were over. The Hastings family fortune had been dissolved, and Mia had inherited what was rightfully hers, the part of her inheritance that had always been kept from her. But she didn't care about the money. What mattered was her freedom, the freedom to choose her own destiny. She walked into the cafe, greeted by familiar faces, her heart light. She had made a life for herself, her own life, and it had nothing to do with the legacy of the Hastings. Mia had finally found her place in the world, and this time it was hers to define. The end. If you enjoyed this thrilling mystery, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another gripping story. What did you think of Mia's journey? Let us know in the comments below. Would you have made the same choices Mia did? More incredible stories coming soon. Stay tuned. Subscribe now and be part of our storytelling community. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep reading.